The oldest and strongest human emotion is fear. And the oldest and strongest type of fear is trepidation of the unknown. When we were children, our parents told us that monsters didn't exist. But we were sure that something was lurking under the bed or in the closet. Fear sees, even if our eyes are closed. Welcome to the realm of the arcane. My name is LON STRICKLER. Join me as I examine unexplained creatures, strange manifestations, and remarkable realities. Imagine this next hour as a voyage of discovery to strange lands, seeking not for new territory, but for new knowledge of the supernatural. Come on board as we begin this adventure together. Folks, good evening and welcome to another episode of Arcane Radio, where we explore the unexplained live on Beyond Explanation. I'm your host, LON STRICKLER, coming to you within a cannon shot of the hallowed fields of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Thanks for joining me. Now, as always, just to note that Arcane Radio and Beyond Explanation is made possible by you liking, subscribing, and sharing our programming. The SUPERCHAT donations are essential for us to continue offering you our unique content, and your consideration is very much needed and appreciated. So tonight, we have Claudia Granger. Claudia Granger is a psychic medium, soul empath, and regression therapist who has the gift of seeing between worlds since childhood, trained in telepathy and guided meditations. As a synergetic therapist and Reiki master, her focus is to be part or the end of all suffering. She loves to write children's stories to empower the younger generation. As a reincarnation and synergetic therapist, she will help to release trauma in all areas of life and connections. She can see colors in the magnetic field, the aura of human beings, animals, and trees. Her goal is to be the bridge from disharmony to harmony. Claudia's website can be found at claudiagranger.com. So, Claudia, thank you so much for joining me this evening.
And thank you so much, Lon, for having me. And I have to say, you have a very interesting introduction, because you're talking right about the children and seeing and fear. And I'm having sometimes a kids program where I teach psychic children not to fear what they're seeing if the parents do not know what to do with them, because that's exactly what happened to me. I was seeing spirits all the time. I was adopted many times, and my parents were psychic too, but they didn't do anything. It gave them a scare. They were fearing it, so they shut it down. And for me, it's important that kids are aware. If you see something and parents ask them what they're seeing, let them describe it, and together ask the spirit who comes, for example, through the door, through the wall, who are you? Where are you coming from, what you're doing, what you're needing, and not ignoring it and suppressing it, and therefore creating more fear. Because when the kids see something and the parents say, there's nothing there, then the kid has the sense of, well, but I'm seeing something. How can mom or dad say there's nothing there? And then the kid gets insecure and knows mom doesn't see it, so that's the parameter of truth. So I must be wrong, but I'm seeing it. So again, it's always good to talk with your kids about these things when they have dreams, and I talk about monsters and instead of, the angels around the bed, seeing the monsters underneath the bed. So I love your introduction. Thank you, Lorna.
Well, I tell you, that's a big part of my work. When I'm working with families for the most part, and a lot of times you run across children who are psychic. I mean, they're gifted. And most of the times they're very young and they don't understand what they're seeing or sensing. And I have always taken time to actually work with them individually. And that's important. I've had several who have grown up to be very interesting, very gifted young psychics. And I'm very proud of that myself. And absolutely, that's a big part of what I do. And I'm glad you brought that point up.
Well, and things for you bringing this up further as young psychics, because that's where we can run easily into problems. Because when you have a lot of power in you and a psychic kinetic power and psychic abilities, and you do not know what to do with it, you can inadvertently open portals, have thought forms, create, manifest, do things. And I, in one of the TV shows on the haunting, I taught a little girl what to do after she inadvertently opened a portal to a Ouija board, and then saw this and did this, and she was a portal in herself, where then after this Ouija board experiences, she just let energies come through, and they were manifesting all around her. So it's important for the youngsters to be trained. What do I do? What do I not do? And how do I protect myself, and not to just channel anything, because channeling is so much fun.
Well, you recently had a video on your channel about Ouija boards, and I talk about that a lot because of most likely more importantly, the bad things that can result of it. What kind of experiences have you had with clients, or even yourself, with Ouija boards?
Well, first of all, I never had any inkling on or desire to touch that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it was always creepy, and when let's say angels don't use it, they don't need that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, what kind of spirits would want to come through there? Maybe the lower vibrational kind, seems to me like. So
Mm-hmm.
I always felt low vibration coming from these boards. And I know, and my guiding ones who trained me from within since I was a child told me to never do anything in workings. And to me, that is a working, that is a practice without protection.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we would have way less incidents of, dimension rifts, which that's what Ouija boards do. You are opening with the kinesthetic energy of two participants a gateway or doorway to the other side. You're creating that opening. You're almost like ripping it open, I want to say, through your desire and through your focus, and then anything can come through. But you're not protected, and you're not containing anything what you come through. So I really do not want to touch that stuff. But in this lady I worked with, or this young girl, better said, she wanted to connect with her father on the other side. And that's a very valid wish, to connect with your deceased, crossed over loved one, especially when it's a close family member. And so she worked with her cousin with the board. And of course, something came through. And in the beginning, I'm getting still chills when I'm talking about it. And in the beginning, I impersonized the father figure. And then only when this father figure got brutal with her, it showed the true face of a demon. And I just have to say, it's really, even just the energy, remembering working with this slow vibrational dynamic being, impersonating a loved one, really gives me the thrills still to this day. So it's important to know what you're doing when you're dealing with these kind of games.
Yeah, I have a lot of people ask me about divination in general. Either tarot cards, pendulum, this and that, Ouija boards. What are your thoughts on that overall?
Well, I would say know your tools. And there are some good tools, there are some excellent tools, and then there are some not so good tools. I would say pendulum is always easy. If you ask the right question, you will get a lot of answers. For me, what would be best to put a piece of paper on and mark the yes and no areas, and mark areas if you talk about medical intuitive work, what minerals, what vitamins, whatever, is well-meaning, or am I missing? And then you can use with the pendulum thing and see how it swings. No harm done.
Right.
Because you're not invoking anything.
Right.
When you're using tarot cards, it's already getting a little bit more difficult, because some tarot cards are like gateways. Every card is like a gateway to an energy field. And there are unfortunately some tarot cards which are connected to lower vibrational fields. And in that particular video, I talked about the Aleister Crowley tarot cards, the Thoth tarot, and how I came to notice this Thoth tarot, even though it's so wonderful, colorful, being of lower frequency, which you never would have thought if you just look at the cards. Uh, One of my group members in Germany, when I was still working there, had the tarot cards over her bed, and she had always nightmares. Her life was going down the drain. Nothing worked out right. And she always had, again, these nightmarish things happening. So I tuned into her remote viewing, and said, you have something over your head, over your bed. Is there something hanging or something laying? And she said, yeah, I have a board overhead, and there are tarot cards, and they're really beautiful, and I really like them very much. And I said, well, then bring them to the next meeting and let's see what it's about. And first take them away. And after she took them off the shelf over her head, first night she slept like a baby. She said, that's weird, but they're so nice. So she brought them, and I tuned into them card by card, and it just also the same thing, gives me chills. We have to understand that Aleister Crowley was a white magician and then turned to the dark side. So he was binding still from the other side energy to himself from these cards, through the gateways. Every card is like a symbol, like a gateway. And then after convincing her to let go for the sake of betterment in her past, she allowed me to burn them. And boy, that was a nightmare. They didn't want to burn, and they didn't want to burn. Even lighter fuel, they didn't want to burn. So I had to call my best girlfriend in, and we then burned it together. But the flames of these cards were following us as we were going around the children where we were burning them in. They were following us. So they had a life on their own. So when tarot cards, like a window to something, are connected to energy fields, which most of them are two good things, or they are totally neutral. I almost want to say they are beautiful, but they are dead cards. They're not alive almost. They don't interact with you. But for the ones who interact with you in a negative field, caution. If there's something off, or you have always nightmares when you're dealing with these, or they tempt you, hands off. Hands off. So one has to be very discerning.
Right.
My recommendation would be to ask, is this tarot deck good for me to work with for my best and highest good? Yes, no. Your higher self knows. And if it's a no, trust that no. No matter how neat and wonderful they look and how nice they are, if it's a no, trust it. Yes, no questions are easily to be following and getting answers to, even if you're not really psychic.
You and I have a love of one thing in particular, and that's crystals. And I use it in my work, and I know you use it. You just got done showing me a beautiful cluster you had tonight. And
yes,
there
nice,
it is.
Clear one. To me, clear, there it is. To me, clear quartz, wherever they're coming, they have this clarifying light vibration, and it reminds me of home.
Yeah, it is. And, I'm very particular about what I use, but, Lemurian quartz is probably some of my favorite.
Lemurian sea crystal, yes.
Yeah. So, I just wanted to bring that up. I know a lot of people are very interested in crystals and how they use. Maybe one day I'm going to have to do a full show about it.
Yeah, that would be fun. Lemurian sea crystals are interesting, as you mentioned, and I'm by coincidence have one laying because I work a lot with them. They have these little ridges and lines. And as you can see here, every side has a different line. And these are frequency givers or receivers, like in a record, or what you call them, these black discs in English. Sorry,
right.
Records, yeah?
Right, records.
So like a record player, this energy can be read, and as you have them on different levels here, you can be connected to a different kind of grid. So each of these sites connects you to a grid. And when you're driving with a car and you're feeling tired, I always take one of these with me, or when I'm traveling by plane, to ground me, because then I am knowing where I am in time and space, or my energy field knows where I am in time and space, because they can bring to me what I need and access out of my system what I do not need anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I be honest, when I'm working, I had to have them around me. I just feel obligated now to have them with me. It just does take me. The energy itself just works with me, and it's interesting. A lot of people look at you and think, "Oh, you're crazy. You got crystals. What are you doing with crystals?" But no, I just feel attached to mine. So I understand.
That's great. I'm sure you chose your crystals by intuition, right?
Mostly, yeah. Yeah, I have. I mean, I'd say for the most part, when I do pick a crystal, it's normally I go to the place where it's at, where it's, I've had people invite me to look at their collections and, are open to me buying a part of their collection. And occasionally I will just pick one that just feels right. And, that's what I do.
That's why I want to say that people should trust themselves more with crystals and not go just by the books. For example, with black stones, everybody says, "Oh, they're protecting me. They're bringing the darkness in, or they're doing this." And I would be very cautious working with black stones, because like black obsidian is used for astro tarot. But if you do not know what you're doing, you can be splintered in the process energetically. So just don't go by books, go by your feel and safety. Safety first, and everything what we are doing, safety first.
Yeah, it's nice to read a book and learn about the crystal and the so-called energies involved with it, but until you actually do the work itself, you kind of discern what is good and what is not going to work. Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that. A lot of people who I work with ask me about referring them to someone who's a regression therapist. And for the most part, those who contact me are those who are looking for answers after a possible abduction or something to that effect. But you've been involved with that, plus past live regression. Can you kind of talk about that a bit?
Yes. There are a variation of past life regressions, how you can access into the past lives. One of them is by going into a trance state or half trance state, and some people using the access point, they're going into the cellar of an inner house, and in the pathway of the cellar subconscious, symbolically in the inner house, there are many doors, and each door leads to a past life, or I would say parallel life. And then you go in there, you put in the lights, and you see what you see, and you hear what you hear, and you smell what you smell. That's one where some people find a little bit scary because it goes down. Then other people use this past life where you go into a beautiful field, a meadow, and they walk along a river, and there's a bridge. You go onto the bridge, you set your intent, you go over the bridge, and there you are. You're in another lifetime. Or another popular one is where you go, same beautiful place, you go towards a mountain, and there is a cave. You set your intent where you want to go, and you're going through. Or there is one where you go reverse, progression from where you are now, and you are counting forward to the time you die, and then you're going into the next life, or from the time you were born, going up, and then going back down in the life before that. That's a possibility too. What I like to do personally is a little bit different, and it can be done while just normally sitting. And I work with a golden light for protection first. Then I let them go into their inner house, which is a tool, as an inner house represents who we are. And then we go into the attic, which is the place of how we think, and the seat of the soul, the third eye center. Then there we lay down again to another phase of relaxation and envision a golden strand going through the head, all the way through the roof, all the way into the dimensions, and all the way up there until we see many golden strands. like roots in from a tree going into the earth, but we're going upwards. And then when we see the golden strands, we are setting an intent and say, let's say, I want to go to the time and space when I was adopted, or I want to go into the time and space where I was in Rome, or I want to go into the time and space where I knew LON STRICKLER, or I want to go into a time and space where I knew this person or that person. And then we are sailing down like a little spider on a golden strand and go into the body, conjoin that body with our consciousness into the other soul self consciousness in time and space, because to me time and space doesn't really exist. So we sail down and then we go into the feet first, because the first thing to ground yourself into that other body is through their feet. And then ask male, female feet, shoes on, no shoes on, skin tone, and so on, to tune into more into the body sensations of the other soul self there in time and space. And then looking around, inside, outside, where are we? Is there somebody else around? And to slowly accustom the person to see through the other party's eyes. And then we go from there because time and space doesn't really exist also, as we are just a guest in that other life. Yeah, we can merge really severely, or we can just watch, or we can participate, but we are always joining the other soul self here in the third eye center. But because of that, we are not bound to the time and space. We can go fast forward or backward. And what we also can do is, one of my specialties, we can heal past lives. Let's say if somebody's prosecuted, we change the imprint of that parameter in that life to make it better. If it's permission, if there's an allowance and a permission to do so. If it's a destined event, you cannot change anything. But what happens is that when we have one reality, we can uplink to a higher version of that reality. Yeah. So when we are here before and it was a dramatic experience, we can go a little bit higher up and come not from a place of drama anymore. So we are healing the drama in that past life. And that can cause a ripple effect through the whole many lifetimes where we have a theme. Let's say you have a theme of drowning. And in this lifetime, you didn't have any incidents about drowning, but you are so scared the boat will topple over. You are so scared that you're, drown. So then we can check into the parameters of other lives where that happened and can make the person feel better or stay with them while they're drowning, or to make them feel not alone. So we can take an active part of betterment in that other lifetime, and therefore take the imprint out of the drama in that life.
Interesting. Now, folks, if you have questions, please post them up on the chat, and Bill and Vincent will put them up there. You mentioned go ahead, Claudia. Go ahead and continue.
No, I just wanted to say, in the abduction cases, very similar. First, we need to go over the barrier. A lot of times when people got abducted, they have a mind vibe. They don't remember. They have an uneasy feeling about certain things, but they don't remember. It is very common, this mind vibe scenario. And then we have to overcome what would make the client feel safe enough to look at things without fear. Yeah, we have to again go into a protective mode. And then we can see what is done, and then we can understand what is done. And with that knowledge, we don't have to necessarily fear, because we can go with different receptors of our mind or body sensations into the scenario. And we can take our power back. If it's a violational scenario where, let's say, aliens mutilated something, or I have one client, her ex got taken, and she has kids out there in space, and she had scars from that mutilation. Then, of course, you might not want to look at herself being violated. But again, power is stolen at that moment, and so we can make it that we can take the power back from that scenario.
Now, you had mentioned to me before the show something I didn't know, though I don't know how I would have known, is that you were abducted when you were a child.
Yes, several times. And one of the times it was by very beneficial beings who wanted to ensure that I would make it on this planet Earth, because I came from a higher region and it was not guaranteed that I was a perfect fit soul to body.
Mhm.
And so they had to change my blood and cleanse and clear it so that I could continue to exist on this Earth plane.
Mm.
I remember exactly the New Year's night when it happened. I remember that my mom could not shake me. That was just in the moment when I was lifted up, and she felt something going on in the room, but she didn't know exactly what it was. So my spirit body was uplifted, and then later, when everybody was celebrating loudly outside, my physical body was uplifted too, because I have to this day scars too.
Mm.
And that's when they were explaining to me, but they were nice. They were explaining to me what they were doing and why they were doing it. In coming back to my body the next morning, I had this itchy scar. It was just like, didn't leave me alone. And then the memories came back because I asked them not to mind wipe me, that I would remember what it was. And then, but sometimes when we have these memories, we think we are crazy, we are nuts, that's weird. So my guiding ones always say, seeing is believing, confirmation comes to practice. And they guide me to books where I can get validation to my weird experiences, extraordinary experience or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So in Germany, I got a book called from Jan van Helsing. That's a synonym for an author, and he had a lot to do with UFOs, abductions. And in this book, he describes the story of a young couple, and they were taken many, many times. And they found out in a group setting that the male abductees had all a mark on their thigh, upper thigh, and I think right side, and the women had all a mark on their left lower leg.
Mm.
And it was shown in a picture. And coincidentally, it was exactly the same mark and exactly the same spot. And when I opened the book, I just came to that picture. So I said, okay, this was really real. I didn't dream it. I didn't just make it up. It was, for me, a kind of confirmation. And this is how my guides work with me when I have a question or when they teach me about something, because they're not physical beings who teach me. They're
Right.
spirit beings. So how can I have validation?
Right.
They teach me something and then they lead me to books where it's described, or have people confirm it for me, or such things. And that was one of the incidents. Another one was not so pretty. These abductions were not so much abductions, but more other lifetimes on different ships. One abduction, I hopped them off the table and asked my guides for help. They were not friendly, and I got just really swooped up in another kind of energy vibration, up and down, and brought back to my body. And the harmful aliens couldn't really do anything. So we have light and dark in all levels. Not everything up there is good. Not everything up there is bad.
I agree. You know, we got a question from Vincent, which
Sure.
ties right into this. Can you
Sure.
can you be abducted out of body?
Yes, absolutely. That's what I was just explaining.
Right.
First, they took the spirit body, and then they took the physical body. But absolutely, yes. The energy body, that what you are, can be uplifted out of your physical form. Absolutely, yes, yes.
And then we got a question from Blue Crossroads. Do you use any specific crystals for cleansing during a Reiki session?
I do not have to cleanse through a reading session, but I use crystals after sometimes, if it is a clearing. If I do a clearing from a demonic being or so, I cleanse my space.
Mhm.
Mostly I'm using frankincense, and then I use clear quartz crystals, but of course not a cluster, but a wand. And I sometimes use tachyon crystals too. Give me a moment.
Okay.
Because I have them under my feet for
Ooh.
grounding.
Yeah.
These are created ones, and they're imbued with tachyon energy. And I just use them under my feet to ground me, but also to clear my space above. So ultimately, I don't have to think much. because these guys I programmed for that purpose,
Mhm.
and these Tachyon are perfect for that.
Interesting. You talked about frankincense. I use a lot of frankincense when I'm working. Somebody told me a long time ago, if you want to clear things out, just start burning frankincense or, the resin. And yeah, it does seem to help. I've used it many times in the past.
And it's, yes?
Go ahead.
No, I just say that the Catholic Church knew what they were doing when they're using frankincense and myrrh, because it really transmutes and transforms low vibrations, and darker spirits really don't like it.
No, they don't. They really don't. And it's one of the first things I tell people when they ask me, can I do something to kind of clear things out and make the energy better around me? And I said, first thing I tell them is burn frankincense. That's, it seems to move things around in the positive. I also like using lavender as well for some reason. And you and I have talked about this in class,
Yes,
about lavender and me in colors and such. And lavender seems to be the color that I most respond to. But the actual essential oil and the scent itself is really works positive with me. And I have talked to other people who said the same thing, that certain odors are from oils and such do tend to have a balancing effect on them.
Yes, aromatherapy can be very powerful. For me personally, I'm using frankincense in between healing sessions, so I do not project my personal energy onto the client. So I will put 3 drops of frankincense aromatherapy oil on my hand, and then just cleaning my energy system with it, and put some more before I energetically put my hands over or onto the person's body, or even when I do long distance healing over the photo, so that there's a barrier of cleansing between the divine energy. I'm not saying that I have bad energy, but I do not want to imbue any of my daily stuff onto the client. So I'm always saying, not me, just the divine follows through here.
Another thing I'd asked a lot is, and you touched on it earlier, and we really emphasized this in the beginning of our classes, was surrounding yourself in golden light and detecting your auras. Can you kind of go into that a bit?
Sure. That's the first thing I teach in my Fast Track to Your Psychic Abilities class, because protection is everything, as we discussed with the little kids. If every parent would teach their child the golden light meditation, we would have way more protected and way more balanced children. And they wouldn't easily be violent, because low vibrational energy cannot penetrate this golden shield. So ultimately, you envision a golden sun over your head, which is also a gateway to your soul self, to your divine energy, because golden light energy can be seen with enlightened people. And also that's why saints are painted with a golden halo, not for nothing, because even non-clairvoyant people could see the golden glow over the people's head. And then when you have it as a shield, it works like burning lower frequencies off. But I think there was a question coming in.
No, that was that pulled.
Oh, okay. Well, then very easily done. And that was the first exercise I had to do when my guiding ones taught me. In the very early days in Germany, I worked for an American consultancy company, and I had to drive for an hour and a half with the underground to my workplace from my living space. And in the morning, I was waking up happy. And by the time I came to the workspace, I could have killed somebody. I was just like, as an empath, I was just funneling all the energy in from other people's thoughts, feelings, emotions, aggression of being sitting tight, and so on. So that's when I asked, what can I do? And that's when they gave me this golden light meditation. So I had to do 28 days, envision the golden sun over my head, one ray going through my whole being, head to toe, and cleansing, clearing everything into Mother Earth for recycling, and then bringing it out from the heart into the auric energy field, filling the aura field up like a golden sun itself, and then condensing it to the golden ring of fire to have this envisionment. In the beginning, I didn't believe in envisionment. I thought, how can a thought create a form? And they said, try it out and you will see. So seeing is believing. They always went by that mantra. So I did, and it worked. The first time I did it, it felt so empty because my thoughts, which I thought were my thoughts, were not even mine. And also in the body, I felt so spacey because I wasn't, pressured by other people's emotions and feelings. I can only highly recommend to do that sort of thing if you feel stressed at work or you have, low vibrational people around you to you just claim your space with this.
Mm. Yeah, it's funny. This is something I mentioned. I don't know if I mentioned to you or not, but I have mentioned it before that being an intuitive, we get a lot of these energies that try to grab a hold of you, try to get your attention. Earthbounds, I guess, for the most part, they show you maybe their death state, or they just try to get your attention to let you know they're there.
Mm-hmm.
How do you take care of that? I mean, I know most of us get that, but it can be troublesome many
Yes.
times.
Specifically, not in my personal space. In my personal space, I put buffer zones in so that low vibrational entities cannot even come close. And I do that in 3 layers. I put some room stuff up, so my house is perfectly safe. But when I'm going into a hotel and there have been somebody dying and they're earthbound, that can be some bothersome because they're not, come on, let me in, talk to me. Or I remember one incident when I was learning for that consultancy group. A guy died 3 streets down, and my boyfriend at the time was also very clairvoyant. So this guy showed up. We see him, right? And he said, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "Well, you can see me." "Yeah, sure, we can see you." Well, he said, "Everybody is dumb. Nobody can see and hear me anymore." And I thought, oh, okay. So he's not aware that he's dead.
Yeah.
So I asked him, "Where are you from?" And I asked for the name and address. So we went over there, and he was so upset that other people were living in the space now and so on. But he became really nasty. So what do? You really have to open up a gateway of golden light and push them in and ask the angelic beings to help them, bring them to the higher self. So, or to the higher region where they can be at peace. It depends on how nasty these earthbound spirits are. Some are really lost, just, like this guy who wasn't even aware that he was dead because he was so non-believing and, atheistic, not believing in anything. And so the only thing he knew was his place and all his belongings. So that was a fairly easy one, even though he threw some cushion at us, and that was a little bit unnerving.
Well, even when we do cases, you got to. That's one of the first things you got to determine. Does this earthbound know that they're dead? Many
Right,
times they don't realize it, and they're just trying to get your attention. And it causes
right.
issues. So
Well,
that's hard to explain to people.
I would always engage first. Um, who are you? What do you want? Why do you want it? And depending on what it says, then do you need to have any information related to somebody? If that's not the case and they just want to get your attention to chat or suck your energy dry, then I would claim my space and say, you have no business waking me up, you have no business doing it, and really push them out mentally. And ask, in my case, I asked Archangel Michael, Gabriel, and Uriel to put them in the golden bubble and take that being or leftover entity away to a higher place. Because even demons do not have the right to interfere with your free will or interfere with your life path. That means when you're repeating, you have no right to interfere with me, my free will, and my right path, and so on and so forth. They risk the possibility of being dispersed. And if they do not withdraw freely, you have the right to relinquish them and make them go away in a more unfriendly way. I work a lot with ruin energies. That means one could say the ruined gods, even though I'm also in a way working with Jesus. So to me, it's not a one or the other. I work with all there is because we're interconnected in all there is. And I have one particular rune, which is 2 resets, and I use that to purify the energy around me and then to purify that spirit and, to disperse it.
Mm. One thing that I have tried to explain to people in the past, and it comes up with cases, not necessarily hauntings and such, but even with cryptids are thought forms. And you talked about thought forms, how the like poltergeist or even thought forms, how the mind can manifest these energies, these entities. Can you give us a kind of an example of a troublesome thought form that you've ever encountered?
Yeah, this young lady who I worked with on for the haunting show to clear this demon out of their family, she attracted, let's say, like-minded youngsters
Mm-hmm.
who also had psychic abilities.
Mm.
And one of them, you get attention in a positive way, you get attention in a negative way. And this young lady, the other lady I was not working with, opened up portals left and right with her thoughts and made things move. And she was inadvertently attracting to crosses because, she was taught, oh, crosses are Christian, crosses protect. So she found crosses everywhere. It's like some people find four-leaf clovers. She found crosses,
Right.
but only she found some which had been prayed with in absolute desperation and were carrying the low vibrational energies because of it. They were anchored in these, crosses and beads. So she accumulated that in herself and then made things move, and spirits would appear and all sorts of help would break loose. And so when I looked at these 2 young ladies with these tremendous gifts and power of thought, and one was using it for calming things down and sending things into the higher region because I had taught her, and the other one was, like, hey, pay attention to me, and then spirits were walking to her, through her. She became a living, walking portal.
Mm.
And that can be been through a shock experience. That can happen when a person has an accident and they're energetically wide open, split open, that something slips in. It can happen after an operation. That's why I'm always telling people when they have an operation to envision the golden light bubble about them when they're going out of body because of the narcotics they're getting. You're hanging half in of your body energy and half out of your body. And that's a vulnerability factor. So, but when you, purity, attention, thinking, you can accumulate energy according to your frustrations. So if a person is frustrated and angry, they can attract more of the same. If a person is then trying to work through it or go beyond it, that's a different story. But the most problematic one is when people create these poltergeist situations when they invite them in because they're had a shock and something could slip in through them. And then when they are gifted, they're making it worse and multiplying the scenario.
Okay. One thing that I've been in and out of the hospital a lot in the past couple of years. And, I don't particularly like hospitals for a lot of reasons, of course, but the energy and the spirits that hang around in hospitals, you do run into something occasionally that will not know that it has passed.
Yeah.
And in fact, the last time I was in there about a couple months ago for a procedure, I had one that was just literally bugging me the whole time I was there. And I was, not to alarm the nurses and such around me. I was just trying to get this thing just leave me alone. But this thing was very persistent. And of course, I'm laying there not being able to do so much and trying to get this thing to move on. It does tend to be a problem.
Yes. Now when I go into hospitals, I always install a golden sun in my room, and mentally when I know whose doctor is, or if I would be on the operation table, and install that there ahead of time, because time and space doesn't really exist. But I even got me an attachment from a hospital situation when I was a child.
Really?
Yeah, I was having an appendix removed in Germany. That's very common to do so, and tonsils as well. And there was a girl dying in the next door room over, and I was laying there, and her spirit came over. I can see spirit to me, it's nothing unusual. So I talked to the spirit, and we got along really well. And while I was there over the weekend waiting for the operation, we had company. We were talking. So I didn't know that she had died in the next room over. And because we got along so well, so she said, "Do you want to continue to play with me?" I said, "Sure." So inadvertently, I took her home and forgot about it along the lines. And then when I got certain bothersome thoughts or certain things were happening, somebody said to me, "Do you not know that you have attachment in a certain area?" And it's like, this is weird. I cannot have an attachment, not me, right? So I was digging deeper in this emotional release technique I'm doing. And lo and behold, there was the incident dug deep in, almost like a burrowed in, the anchor from that shock experience, of her and me laying there waiting for unknowns with pain for that operation. And I went and talked to her, thanked her for, my company and protection that she gave me, and let her go. And she thanked me for having shared my life experience for so many years. It was quite an encounter. I never thought that I would have an attachment. But it can be very unbeknownst to us sometimes that we have somebody who helps us and we help them. And it's a synergy, key lock principle. So sometimes we have to look at key lock principles when we have something happening to us, or when we are always bothered by a particular, yours is by chance, right? You go into hospital, there's somebody just died, you can see them. When a person is psychic, in the lower astral level, it's like a flame in the darkness. So spirits who are in the in-between world can easily see that flame in the darkness. And I asked my guides, what do I do in these scenarios? And they said, well, first of all, no fear. These spirits are like moths to the flame. Your light is so strong. Have you ever seen a moth dousing out a candle? No. The candle might flicker while the moth burns up in it, but the moth never will douse out the flame. The flame is always stronger. And by that principle, I abide today. In some cases, I had to take the spirit in and burn it up within myself through the soul energy I use. But mostly I try not to do it and not take anything in me or onto me, but, deal with it outside. And again, Archangel Michael coming in with the golden light power, taking it away, works for me.
Well, and I told you this, I recently had an attachment removed from myself. And it was from a haunting I had. Well, it wasn't really a haunting, it was just an investigation that I was involved with in 1984. Now, 37 years later, and of course, my friend Jennifer said, "You got an attachment." And I thought, I didn't think she was very serious about it, but she removed it. I was drained for a whole day afterward, but I had no idea that I had an attachment with me all those years, but I did.
And that brings me, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. That brings me to a very good point here. You said you were drained after it was removed. And you release something and there's an energy hole, we have energy holes in our aura, our energy field. And so we have to ask ourselves, what would it take to fill that hole after removal? I always work with healing frequencies of color. I would ask what color frequency would I need to feel and be my best there where this thing had been sitting, and then letting consciously the healing frequencies go into that spot and envision it to be really. Sometimes I'm even with my physical hands rub at a spot and let the color frequency come through my hands and fill in the energy hole. So thank you for mentioning that. That's very valid, that we have to do something so that we are not drained anymore.
Yeah, it was. I was kind of shocked. I mean, it did. And there have been times when I have worked the case and remotely worked the case, and I just feel tuckered out for like 2 days full. I mean, I guess the energy I espouse during the actual clearing and such. I mean, it's gratifying. I feel very gratified doing it, but man, I am just knocked out. And that's kind of a downfall for doing that. But I do get a lot of joy out of doing that. Spirit rescue, actually.
You're saying something about the spiritual work. I noticed in my early meditation groups and classes, we had a diabetic in our group. And I noticed that the blood sugar level goes down in meditation. So after each meditation, she instantaneously had to eat some sweets, not to be undersugared. And she always had to measure her blood sugar level after when we did meditation work. And we went far out there. So maybe it would help you to eat a piece of chocolate after when you come back into your body right away.
Well, that's interesting because I am diabetic. So maybe that has something to do with it. I never thought about checking my glucose, but maybe I should from now on.
Yeah, I remember she always had to do that every single time after meditation or Reiki. She was also a Reiki master. Every time after going out there in the energies, she had to substitute later with some chocolate or whatever she used.
Wow. Okay. Wow, that's interesting. Recently, my team has been working. For years we've been working with these winged humanoid sightings in Chicago, and more recently at O'Hara, and we have supposedly, and we do believe that we made contact with these beings. And you're part of our group, actually, who's kind of advising us as to what's going on. So let me ask you, I mean, and I know people are thinking about this in the chat and online. What are your thoughts about these unseen ones?
Well, obviously they're not that unseen because they make themselves seen to a few people, and more with the vibration rising on our planet, we will see more beings appearing on our radar in that particular area of O'Hare. And forgive me, but I haven't tuned too much into the whole field because I'm so far removed from that place that I have not had a personal experience there. Only dropping into your group, some being from this group, which appears to, there, contacted me very briefly. But what I perceived when I was tuning into the scenario is that there is a rift in time and space. And through this rift in time and space, or we could say portal, also with their energy ley lines helping the incident of the portal being open or the rift in time and space being open, these beings can come easily and naturally through. This is not their planet necessarily, but they're enjoying this exchange of communication with your group. And seems to me they're not seemingly hostile, even though they look strange. I find them. One of your group drew one, and that grabbed me. That drawing was like a winged one with humanoid, almost like a gorilla-like face with their eye ridges, and then but it looked like a mixture with like a bat with a gorilla humanoid kind of thing. And please, folk upstairs, do not get offended when I describe you this way. And when I was following your exchanges about these beings, I was contacted by one very briefly, and it just popped into my mind. His name was Onari, and because of the show, I knew you would ask sooner or later, and I said, I don't know anything about you guys, so tell me something. And he did, and I was wondering, where are you from? And he said, right next door. And with right next door, he meant another dimension. We are here in 3D, and then there's fourth and fifth and so on dimensions. And he meant with right next door that part of them were in the fourth and fifth dimension, situated. But we see our planet as planet, but there are other ether planetary systems, and beings have been living here for ages and ever and ever. So their home is not 3D, their home is 4 and 5D, 5 dimension. And then I asked, well, curious, there is a lot of names with you and you are and so on. I said, do you have anything to do with the Mesopotamian area and Ur? Yeah, and was in that true stream land. And he said, yep, very short, yep. And I asked then further, well, did you guys live that long? And he said, nope. And that was not exactly our species, but it was a connected species. And I remember then, and I looked it up today, that there were a lot of in Mesopotamia and also partially in Persia, these winged beings. They look like mixture between bird and human. And he said, yeah, that's kind of like cousins, but that's not us. But we had a domain there too. So, and obviously, like in the case with O'Hare, very much visible to the folks. Otherwise, these folks down in Mesopotamia wouldn't have had sculptures and integrated it into their building material, these winged beings. So winged beings have been very predominant. I said, yep. And we were there too. And yes, we had contacts even then. And maybe Jennifer can confirm that or not later on. But that was just a quick drop in from one of these beings. Again, I have not had a personal encounter, so I cannot exactly say I saw one, except in my mind's eye, very briefly. And it was mostly triggered also by this excellent drawing.
Well, Vincent, your drawing just got acknowledged. It's some of the group have been contacted in indirect ways. It's interesting. One in particular, Manuel, has had some other issues as a result of it. But I think we are learning. I think this is something that's going to take time. We're trying to be as forthright as possible, and they're being forthright with us, and maybe we can develop some type of close relationship. I do know one thing. They do not particularly like the males in our group. They like the females, but they aren't too thrilled about the males from what we have been told. Now, I don't know if they said that to you or what that is about, but I don't know if they don't trust us for some reason or what that is. But
no, I think it has something to do with their male hormonal structure. Females operating more in the water element and the softer energy. Male have a lot of testosterone and can easily, even in spirit, go into, excuse my French, a sing contest. And they do not want that because, let's say, if they would be triggered, they have power. And if they would be triggered, it's almost like a boxer who has been boxing for ages, and then comes a school kid and says, hey, big guy, and like, if you would just touch me, and the boxer might say, and the kid will fall over. So, and certain things are reflectual. I think it's not about scared or they don't like, it's more about the resonance. So with the female resonance, with the receptors of the biochemical makeup, I might say, it is easier to slide and contact into the female antennas rather than the male physiology makeup.
Mm.
And if they would contact easier with you guys, it would be more like a, it would be harsher.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they do not want to create conflict.
Right.
So they're avoiding this conflict because, everybody has instincts, I would say. In a word, maybe the word instinct is not really correct, but in a tendency, let's say. And let's say you put your antennas out that fast, like here I am, and contact, or it's just an example. Please don't get me wrong. I just tried to explain
No, I get
something
it. I
that's
understand.
really hard to explain.
Yeah.
And then they come down. It could cause maybe more friction or more problem for the individual who contacts there. They're just showing me seeing is no problem, but hearing or sensing is no problem either. But going beyond sensing into really communication, then easily the wires get crossed.
Right.
And they don't want that. They don't want to cause any harm.
Well, I can understand that. And it's interesting. One thing we did find out recently was that the beings that are showing up around Chicago are juveniles, and that they do have genders comparable to male and female. So, that's something else. We're getting more information as we go. But, Claudia, I want to thank you for coming on this evening. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I love talking to you. You and I connect. I just enjoy it. You're wonderful. And I want to again thank you for joining me this evening.
Thank you. It was delightful to go about with all these different themes and hopping from one to the next. Thank you so much for having me today. It was delightful.
Well, I will talk to you soon. You take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Now, Claudia's website, again, is claudiagranger.com. If you have an unexplained encounter or sighting, feel free to contact me through Phantoms and Monsters blog site. I want to again thank Claudia for joining me this evening, and thanks to each and all of you for watching and chatting. Now, if you made a super chat donation, it's truly appreciated. Your support is what makes this possible. Please like, subscribe, and share. Now, next week, we will be discussing hellhounds and canid cryptids with W.T. Watson. That'll be an interesting show. He's recently written a book, and we will be talking about that and some of the things he has investigated as well. So until next week, stay healthy, have a safe and enjoyable weekend. Good night.